Hello my witches! Gyro here with another build for you for 3.16 Scourge League in Path of Exile. Been very exciting week, and today we're talking about, you guessed it, a witch build, except a lot of you have been expecting for me to continue with the previewed earlier Arc Witch build, which I certainly will come back to, so please don't fret, but at the same time I got distracted and very much taken by, in a positive way, by this particular build, which is an Essence Drain Bane Witch, specifically Occultist. It would be a lie to say that a lot of builds out there that you see on YouTube, including my own, are not inspired by someone else's builds. So in this particular case, I'd like to straight away acknowledge this awesome dude who inspired me by his video to make my own. The build is sort of heavily influenced by his direction for the Bane Occultist Witch, which he explains fantastically well. And if you know my builds, they are usually directed towards beginners of Path of Exile, and I kinda try to make things a lot simpler, even if it comes at the expense of my builds not being as bulletproof, as rock solid for the high-end content. I don't claim that my builds are. Alright, so what we're looking at here is a Bane Occultist chassis, so to speak, the baseline of the Witch build in Path of Exile 3.16 specifically. So this build relies on newly added masteries in Passive Skill Tree and a whole bunch of other particular things. In this particular build, if you are familiar a little bit with the spells and the skills of Path of Exile, you already know that this is going to be a chaos damage build, as opposed to elemental damage builds that are very frequently used for witches, such as Arc for elemental damage, or Creeping Frost with a cold damage, and so on and so forth. This one is chaos build. I would say that, put simply, creation of this build and leveling of this build is divided into two parts, two big parts. First one, before you get Bane skill, and the second one, obviously, after you get Bane skill. What do I like about this particular build? Gameplay, how it feels, etc. I like that it's very simple. I always am drawn to the builds that are very simple. I create my own builds, or sometimes I try to adapt other people's builds, which is the case in this particular situation. So in this case, you start building this witch very simply. Even before you become an occultist, you start as a witch, you invest into boosting of your spell damage, you invest into your maximum life and maximum mana on the way, you add a little bit to the elemental resistances, and invest quite. With 1 point you get plus 20 to strength and dexterity, which with 1 point allocated allows you to equip equipment that otherwise you might not be able to equip. I would not go towards the left side just yet. I would proceed as per the original videos, kind of inspirational videos recommendation. I would follow this main path towards the right hand side and up towards this particular node, which is called Whispers of Doom, that allow you to apply an additional curse. So by the time you get Whispers of Doom, if you didn't take any deviations, if you just continued going from the center here, up and right and up and right until you got Whispers of Doom, by this time you would be around level 24-25. 24-25 is Sun Encampment. As soon as you help Clarissa find Tolman in Crematorium, that quest in the campaign, you should be given Bane as a quest reward, the skill Bane. Skill Bane is a fantastic skill. Let's take a closer look at this. Bane is a chaos spell. It is an AoE, duration, and a hex. It applies a debuff in an area to all enemies that does chaos damage, put simply. The best thing about Bane is the fact that any other curses or hexes that Bane is supported by, or that are in the same linked cluster, as you can see here, Enfeeble, Despair, Temporal Chains, they are all curses or hexes, and none of them highlight Bane when we mouse over these curses. So what it means is the fact that, technically speaking, they are not treated as support gems to Bane. However, Bane's description says linked hex curses are also applied to those enemies, so you are multi-curse enemies, which is why this particular passive skill tree node, Whispers of Doom, was very important. It allows you to apply additional curse. Additionally, what Bane does is that debuff duration is increased per curse applied, and also extra damage. 41% more damage per curse applied is applied to the target. That's massive, my friends. That is absolutely massive, and which makes Bane probably one of suddenly my favorite skills that I've never used in the previous leagues in the past. But right now I'm really excited to be inspired by that original video and kind of try to make it my own, adapt someone else's build, which I think is fair. What else am I doing here? I also followed the original author's recommendation to buy on the community market very cheaply, like a couple of Chaos Orbs only. It cost me Cane of Unraveling Azomite Staff. This is probably one very highly recommended item for this build. I would not say it's mandatory, but I'd say it makes a massive difference to your damage output. It is increasing chaos damage multiplier by a lot. It is increasing chaos damage by 20%. It is also giving you power charges and increases cast speed per power charge, which in this case is not critical, I suppose. And most importantly, probably, it adds +2 levels to all chaos damage spells that you have, which is not just Bane. Bane is our AoE, main map clearing ability. That is what we're going to use as we clear the maps. Run around, apply it to anything, anything dies. It's fantastic, I really love it. But for single target, we are going to obviously debuff the target with Bane as well, but we're also going to use Essence Drain. Essence Drain is firing a projectile that applies also a damage over time debuff when it hits. So, and you are also healed for a portion of the debuff of this damage. So whenever we're dealing with slightly more stubborn yellow enemies and unique sort of enemies, bosses, then we are going to throw Bane, throw Essence Drain. Bane, Essence Drain. That's what we're going to be doing. This build is not optimized for endgame, red maps, whatever, in case it wasn't clear enough, because people seem to just ignore all disclaimers that I give them and then they start complaining. Please don't be one of them. Which is why I'm telling you, it's fantastic to level. It's probably, not probably, but without a doubt, much better than, let's say, Arc Witch at boss fights. Much more enjoyable, much safer. You apply debuffs and you run around the bosses. You apply debuffs and you run around. I could not recommend it enough. It's fantastic. And it has huge potential. You can continue developing it. You can continue as you approach endgame. You can start investing into cluster jewels. As I said in a lot of my previous videos, cluster jewels are subject to availability. Not everyone has them. You need to find them or you need to buy them on the community market. So this is a decent cluster jewel, obviously not the top end game optimized, but it increases chaos damage, and each one of the smaller nodes here increases chaos damage by 15% and adds a little bit of other useful things to us, like evasion and regeneration of life per second. Who would say no to that? Then we have a very decent here medium jewel socket that increases damage over time further, and right now I'm leveling towards Brood for Potency, which will increase damage over time even more so. So potential for the damage accumulation for this build is absolutely massive, considering that it offers a lot less intense gameplay. You throw debuffs around and then you dodge bosses, projectiles, or any other issues from the bosses or from the mobs that try to freeze you. Freezing is death, usually stun is death. I'm not countering that in this build just yet, because again, it's not optimized just yet. That's about it, my friends. This was supposed to be a quick check-in to tell you what have I been playing in Path of Exile 3.16 so far. Have I been pushing Arc Witch? I have not, but I am planning to revisit Arc Witch, and I'm definitely going to try other witch builds, such as minion builds, of course, and not just witch builds. Witches are not the only thing that I build, but I decided to start 3.16 Scourge League as a witch. Happens to be the case. Really happy to be inspired by this build from someone else. I think it's completely fair to give someone else's build a try, appreciate their efforts, and try to apply your own spin on this stuff, or at least not sell it for your own without acknowledging another person. I would never want someone to do that to me, and I would never do that to other creators either. I hope you enjoyed this for what it's worth. Please take a look at my version of the POB Path of Building, link in the description of the video if you would like my version of the build. Enough said. I think this is a great build. I recommend that you try it. Thanks very much for tuning in today, and come back for some other Path of Exile builds for 3.16, the ones that are inevitably coming your way. At this current rate and with my real life kind of busyness, I would say you can expect at least one update or one new build per week. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Your support, interest, other kind of stuff, comments are very much appreciated. Thanks again. See you soon. Talk next time.